that are alive. But if you will, indulge me for a few moments, let's open up our Bibles to the book of Matthew, Matthew chapter 21. In Matthew chapter 21, we're going to read verses 6 through 11. Matthew 21, verses 6 through 11. When you found it, say, I got it. If you're online, you find it, type, I got it. Matthew 21, verses 6 through 11. Okay, I got a thumbs up. I'm going to take this and I got it. So Matthew 21, verse 6 through 11. A thumbs up and the shoot. Yes, I got it. All right, Matthew 21, verse 6 through 11. The disciples went and did as Jesus directed them. They bought the donkey and the colt and put on them their cloaks, and he sat on them. Most of the crowd spread their cloaks on the road, and others cut branches from the trees and spread them on the road. And the crowds that went before him and that followed him were shouting, Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest. And when he entered Jerusalem, the whole city was stirred up, saying, Who is this? And the crowd said, This is the prophet, I didn't scan for you, Jesus of Nazareth. So really quickly, in terms of Palm Sunday, you might have heard that reading and said, there's no reading or mention of palm branches anywhere in Matthew 21. If you go to John's account, he talks about them cutting the palm branches down. So this is not heresy to say Palm Sunday. There were actually palms there. And it was actually tradition in the Bible where palms would be used to do what? Welcome home a conquering king. They were used, so there were political ramifications when it came to palms. In the way there were nationalist implications when palms were used. And this is going to be important because remember, the title of this message, or where we're going, is around the idea of unexpected. And so Palm Sunday, in just the way that it is super unexpected. And so why is it important for us today? Last little while ago, I don't remember how long ago, but we did a message called Unre, One King. And it coincided with the No Kings protest that was happening at that time. And so yesterday, on the 28th, there was also a No Kings protest. This is either the second or third. I was listening to the guy who's the third. Yes, the third one. I was listening to the guy talk about who actually his organization that they put it on. This is the third one. So the last time it happened, we in our own church had our formal protest with the No Kings and talking through the idea of Unre, or one king. And so we talked through the fact that Jesus was the king. And we talked about the downfalls of what happens when you exalt another king, a political national king other than Jesus, and what we went through Samuel and talked about the punishment or the consequence that they got when they said, God, give us a king like the other nations. And so today we're talking through the idea, and we're still in the idea of a king because Palm Sunday introduces to us a king. But what I love about Palm Sunday is that we get the idea of, or the introduction of, a different type of king than what we were expecting, hence the idea unexpected. So Palm Sunday says this, that when a conquering king comes, or if you read your Bible at the top, depending on what Bible you read, the heading will say triumphal entry. So the idea is when a king comes home, or when a king comes back to their place, that it's a triumph, and so they have these palms, and they're celebrating, they're exalting them, and they're a triumphant king coming in victory. And so Jesus, what we may not know, or maybe you do know it, but this starts what we call the Passion Week, or Holy Week, for our Catholics in the building. They get it, right? And so, but Holy Week starts when Jesus came into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday. And so, we know that we got crucifixion and all that kind of different stuff. So, but this also coincides with the celebration of Passover. It was the Passover season. And if we know about the Passover, that the Passover is when the Jewish community would commemorate when God and had the angel of death pass over. Said, take the hyssop branch and put your doorposts and the door frames, blood on top of them, on the side of them. So when the angel of death comes over, they'll see the blood and pass over. And so the idea, the symbolism, or the call out here from the Old Testament to the New was when when the Lord sees Jesus' blood shed for you and I, that there's the Passover that comes. So this is the commemoration they have every year to commemorate what was done. It's all going to make sense. I'm setting up the groundwork for us. So he comes in. Now, it's interesting because Zechariah 9:9 prophesies the beginning of this particular story. When it talks about the donkey, he says, go ride this donkey, go find this donkey, and tell the owner the Messiah has need of him. So he gives him this donkey. And what you and I know about a king is conquering kings don't come on donkeys. Conquering kings don't come on mules. Conquering kings don't come on that type of animal. Conquering kings come on stallions. Conquering kings come trotting through. Conquering kings come with regalia and all kind of opulence. But the Bible here said Jesus specifically asked for, in fulfillment of prophecy, give me this donkey that hadn't been ridden before. So what we find out is, and I want to so what I'm saying, here's it. Let me slow it down for you real quick. When we look at the Bible, we often say this, that biblically we can see where we can place the Bible on top of or on side of what we are looking at in our current life, our current time, and say, oh, that's where that goes. That's how that applies. When we look at a No Kings protest, when we look at what it's supposed to be symbolizing, when we look at what it's supposed to be wanting, it's here's the thing. When we look at America, right, and we talked about this when we did UNRWA, that there was a specific reason why the Americas were formed out of being under British rule, because there was a king and monarchy that they weren't cool with. So, long story short, we're now at a place because the reason why they weren't rocking with the monarchy was because how that monarchy was treating them, what that monarchy was doing, how that monarchy ruled among the people. Because they have an idea of what a king is and how a king should behave. And when we see them historically, how they behaved, it has not been in a great way. So we're making some inroads here. So he comes and says, I'm presenting to you a different kind of king. Jesus says, and we talked about this when we talked through the Rest and the Rhythm series, about how Christ had to often juxtapose who he was against the trauma of what they'd experienced by people who said they came in his name. Right? So a godly king, King Jesus, would be different than the kings that you had been experiencing. Hence the idea of unexpected. So he comes in and says, I don't know about the other kings that come on steeds and stallions and trotting through, but I'm coming on a donkey. Lets you first know that we talked about this in Matthew 11:28. He says, I'm lowly and I am meek. So I'm already coming in the mere vehicle that I am saying that I'm riding in on is different than what you expect. I'm not coming in a Bentley. I'm not coming in a Rolls Royce. I'm not doing any of the modern preacher stuff Christ says. Because there's a presentation of a king that I'm trying to juxtapose against what you've seen already. This is Palm Sunday. So we're coming in, he comes in, he does this whole piece, and he then comes in and they begin to now worship him. They begin to now lift up their hands. They begin to now wave their palm branches, and they say, Hosanna, Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. So we have, first of all, the prophecy of the donkey from Zechariah 9:9, but now we have the prophecy from the book of Psalms when it talks about this Palm Sunday that's coming. So he says here, now watch this. We talked about this through Isaiah, when we talk about Advent season, about how Israel was expecting this king to come. But in all their expectation, they missed out on the fact of the totality of the reign of Jesus. What it means for Jesus to reign and be king. What do you mean? They said, Hosanna, Hosanna, blessed is he that comes in the name of the Lord. So they were acknowledging him as king. They acknowledge him as king, but Hosanna actually is the word save now. So they were saying, save now, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. So they're saying, Jesus, you are the king, but they were only giving an incomplete rulership to him with their declaration. Why? Because remember, they were under Roman rule, Roman occupation. They were performing their ceremonial rituals. They were going to church, going to synagogue. They're worshiping under Roman rule. We're going to talk about that and that corruption that they were going through later. But so we have all this. So we have an oppressed people saying, Hosanna, save now. We've been expecting through all of antiquity, all of Old Testament, heal us, deliver us in a national kind of way. What they wanted Christ to do was overthrow in a violent, aggressive way the Roman rule and occupation. And here is the first expectation that's not met, that gets met with disappointment. And here then is an unexpected part with us with Jesus. Ask ourselves, how many times have you wanted Jesus to do a certain things, to show up a certain way, to behave in a certain manner, to show up on your behalf in a certain kind of prayer request, and he did not do it. Tell me about, or tell yourself about, how you were disappointed because you expected something to happen that did not happen. You expected God to show up in a way that God never said he would show up. So oftentimes we frame God's appearance based on what our expectation causes us to formulate, right? If I have an expectation of God to save in this way, that's the only way I'm looking to see him. Like, okay, let's make it practical. As parents, how many of you guys feel as parents that sometimes you are just the wallet for your kids? Just a wallet for your kids. But when you try to discipline them, not so much. Just be a wallet for me. I'm not accepting this part of parenting. Just swipe the card, tap the phone, Zelle me. But clean your room, discipline things, not so much. I would endeavor to say, for you and I, on many occasions, we accept one part of the kingship of Christ, but don't accept the other parts of the kingship of Christ. So they came in, Hosanna, 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 expecting him to take over Roman rule, to come and just pillage because he's his king. But the expectation was that, but the disappointment came when he didn't show up that way. So answer this question in your own head. What do you do when God disappoints you? Now, the holy answer would be, oh, he never disappoints me. And then I would say to you, why are you lying? God probably disappointed you this week. But in the disappointment, it's not that God did not do what God was supposed to do. It's you had an expectation that God never said he was going to meet. This is Palm Sunday. So he comes in and says, they come in and say, hey, save us now. And Christ says, and here I want you to hear what I'm saying, because I don't want you to not hear what I'm not saying. Because some of you may say, he doesn't care about my plight. He didn't care about Roman oppression. He didn't care about that. He cared about it. But there's a holistic nature to what Jesus wanted for us. He wanted a salvation of souls. He wanted us to be submitted to him as king. He wanted us to love him with all of our heart, souls, and minds. He wants us to live a holy life. He wants us to confess with our mouths, believe in our hearts that he came, died, resurrected, all that good stuff. He understood that there's a spiritual piece first that predicates the actual stuff that's supposed to happen. So he said, for many of us, we have either ors, not both ands when it comes to Jesus. We have an either or Christianity. God, Lord, I'll take your provision, but I won't submit. God, I'll take what you do and how you bless, but I won't walk in line with your precepts. And so he says here, this is Palm Sunday, he's coming, and you say, what do you mean? Are you reading that into the scripture? That's not what the scripture says. The same, let me fix it for you. The same people who said, Hosanna, Hosanna, save now, based on him not showing up and having a Roman revolt, you go up a little bit, and their next proclamation is, crucify him. Crucify him. Give us Barabbas. But wait a minute. You mean to tell me because I didn't show up in an expected way and do what you wanted me to do, now you're killing me? So I'm asking you today on a Palm Sunday, how many times do you desert Christ because you didn't get your way? How many times do we move away from God because he didn't show up in an expected way? How many times do we say, God, I'm cool, crucify you, go get something else? We find some other way to get fulfillment, some other way to find blessing because we don't think God showed up in a way that makes us feel like he answered the prayer. If Job could say, after all he had gone through, said, though he slay me, yet will I trust him, and we just kicking rocks and dipping and moving, no matter what our slight disappointment is, we got to find where we're misaligned there. So he goes in, he subverts expectations because he wasn't just trying to fix something temporal, but fix something permanent. So the question we want to leave with in that point is, have you ever sold Jesus out because he didn't meet expectations? So now we got Palm Sunday at the same time as upsetting to the leaders because of what it means for what they have set up. So we look here, and I don't hate it, but I think I hate the perception of it. I think a lot of times we perceive that when we read scripture, um, we make it apolitical, thinking that makes it more spiritual, not realizing that it's the spiritual that makes it political. Does that kind of make sense? So we already said that Jesus is not either or but both and in terms of what he wants to do and how he wants to rule. But now we got the people, and you look in Luke 19, doesn't mention it here, but Luke 19, the Pharisees and the rulers were like, Jesus, check these fools. That's it, in modern vernacular. It said, check your disciples. All that screaming out. And he says, if they are quiet, the rocks are going to cry out. And we're going to get to that in a moment. But there was an idea at that moment that made them upset because what Jesus did was now disrupt the syncretism that they had established that worked so well. He said, syncretism? Remember, who were they under the occupation of? Rome. So at this time, Rome was heavily influencing Jewish life. Jewish life paid taxes, paid portion of what their money was to Rome. It wasn't like they were Jewish in opposition of Rome, but they were Jewish in cahoots with Rome. It's different if my life as a Christ follower is a life that lives in opposition to everything against it, but not in cahoots. So why is it important? Why would it be important for Jesus' Palm Sunday entry to be a disruption to state and ecclesiastical syncretism? Would y'all know why? Why would it be important for state and ecclesiastical syncretism to be addressed? You know what syncretism is? Heard the term? So syncretism, quick theology 101. Syncretism is when you take two opposing ideologies or beliefs and it's in the word, sync them together, right? You take two things that aren't supposed to work and you force them to work. And it looks like it works, but one of them is always going to be influenced by the other. So Jewish theology that worshiped Yahweh was not, the syncretism with Roman governance was not benign. I'm trying to say what I'm trying to say, and I want you to hear. So we will often address in churches, in theological circles, and seminaries, syncretism between Christianity and other opposing belief systems. Well, often, I remember in seminary, we're talking about it. I remember in all of my apologetic stuff, whatever, talking about syncretism, how it's dangerous. Yes, I got you, I believe it. But have you ever noticed the cherry picking of syncretism? I don't like that syncretism. Okay, cool, I get you. That shouldn't be going together. Oil and vinegar don't mix, whatever the thing is. Oil and water don't mix. That syncretism, you're right. That's not supposed to sink together. So let me take it back to there, and then I'll bring it back up. How many of the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the religious officials at that time were probably preaching against and talking about syncretism? And don't mix Judaism with that right there. Even you look at the Old Testament, God would always say, don't marry over there because of the syncretism. That would happen. But nobody had a problem with Rome's influence in Judaism. Nobody had a problem with America's influence in Christianity. Nobody had a problem with colonialism speaking into Christianity, into the blood-washed faith. No, but we talked about every other religion out there. We talked about every other thought system and ideology, and we left out the fact that there has been an ideology that's been imposing itself, not from Christianity the other way. That would be cool. We're going to impose in a good way, but that's not what's happening. It's the state-sponsored system that's saying this is what you're going to be. And so what they were upset about, and you're like, this is not what I grew up hearing about on Palm Sunday. I know it was Hosanna, 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 but nobody told you what's saved now. Nobody made the juxtaposition between the political pieces and what. I know. We all grew up hearing the same Palm Sunday sermons. I know, but Jesus is saying here that, even the Jewish officials are saying the presence of Jesus disrupts that. It disrupts now this unholy union that the state had with Judaism. And so now it's not the Romans that are talking about, hey, shut them people up. It's the Jewish officials and the Jewish religious leaders. They're gonna mess up a good thing. They're gonna mess up, our relationship with Rome in order that we use. Watch this. I love the Bible because the Bible just, if you ever hear someone say, or if you've ever said, the Bible is irrelevant, slap yourself, because the Bible has never been more relevant. He goes in, there was a peaceful relationship they had where they did this to maintain power. Now, not Rome. Rome had power. Rome had power. They were the occupiers. But the church or the temple or Judaism didn't have power. So instead of continuing to live the life how they lived throughout all the Old Testament, 39 books, now they want to secede and be up under the influence of Roman occupation, and they want that Roman occupation to tell them, hey, help me have power, religious power. Tell me that does not sound like a moment that we might be occupying at this time. Where the church is not content to not have power. But biblically and historically, the church has never been more powerful, never been more anointed, never been more Holy Spirit filled than when they were in the margins and were outside of power and influence. But when they're in power and influence, they are forcing themselves into the conversation. And they say, I'm gonna link myself up to political power, gonna link myself up to partisan power, gonna link myself up to certain addresses in Washington, D.C. to try and make my movement more powerful overall. And so to maintain power, how do we enter this? Not on a steed, not a stallion, but a never ridden before donkey. But a king came in an unassuming way, unexpected way to kind of to fly in the face of what we are expecting. So they're saying, hey, we don't mess up our relationship. Don't mess it up. Don't mess it up. Don't mess it up. We gonna be done soon. We got eggs to hunt, right? Can I tell y'all something? Quick sidebar. And I'm not gonna go long. I got a timer set, right? Quick sidebar. People. Y'all don't see comment sections everywhere are crazy on everything. Comment sections are always crazy. So I don't know how many, y'all probably don't see them because I hide them, the comments that on the church Facebook page. We get so many comments about Easter, and I've been called every other pagan. Easter is not in the Bible. Like now there's a gender reveal party you just had for your last baby, but I digress. So just saying, I'm just saying, we that's not biblical. That's not in the Bible, but neither is the birthday you just celebrated and went to Cancun for. I'm just saying the inconsistency. But I've gotten things in the church Facebook, like in response to the Easter post. We don't use Easter. This is resurrection. I'm like, I get that. I would call it resurrection too, but I just did Easter. It looked better in print. Whatever. I don't. But so people. Wow. So at any rate, we're going through here, and we have this No Kings protest we just had. We just talked about this a few moments ago. The No Kings protest, and we're looking at the juxtaposition of how Jesus was introducing himself as king versus the type of king that we're protesting on March 28th, yesterday. Had people seen the king that Jesus was, I would probably think that there wouldn't be a protest for that, right? There wouldn't be a protest for that. But I don't know, maybe there would, because they did say crucify him. I don't know. I think a lot of us, when we find disappointment, I don't know, who knows what we do? Who knows what we do when we're disappointed, when we get in that spot? But at any rate, we're going in there, we got the syncretism, and then and now we're going to go into Luke. I was going to Luke. So Luke 19, it say, hey, tell your disciples to be quiet. Tell your disciples to be quiet. And he says, if they don't do anything, the rocks will cry out. The rocks will cry out. That's cry out. So what he's saying is, hey, even if I tell them to not say anything, the truth of who I am is going to come out. The secret is blown. The truth of who I'm here now. Now, mind you, the disciples didn't want him to go. You're like, what do you mean they didn't want him to go? What he came from when he did, he just came from waking up his buddy Lazarus. And the disciples were like, hey, Thomas in particular, let's not go to Jerusalem. If you go, they're going to kill you. Can we just hang loose a little bit? He's like, and it was his time to come. So we got this Passion Week happening. So he comes there. He comes in there like, the rocks will cry out if I don't do anything. So why is that important? We got two quick things to say and we're going to get out of here. He has the rocks to cry out. The truth is going to make itself known. But here's what's important that I want us to see. Because the truth of who he was is disrupting the place now. And I've said similar things like this before. But as a church, as Christians, as we are living out the truth of Jesus Christ, from Palm Sunday onward, that truth that you and I live out, that truth that you and I proclaim is going to begin, we're seeing in some spaces already happen, cause a fissure between those who have submitted to the syncretism of state and church. I'm not talking about separation of church and state. We're not talking about constitutional stuff like that. But we're just talking about what you see. There's a syncretism between national religion. There's a syncretism between 1600 Pennsylvania and the church. There's syncretism between worship services in the Pentagon. There's syncretism there. Because you best believe, ain't nobody doing 5 prayers a day or celebrate 3 prayers a day or 5 pillars of Islam from the White House or from the Department of Homeland Security, whatever they call themselves now. I'm just making a point. And Jesus says, for believers, I know this feels like an untraditional Palm Sunday sermon. I'm sorry, y'all. We'll do better on Easter. But Jesus is saying that the truth that you and I live out as believers in 2026 and 2027 and 2028 is going to begin to cause a fissure, a division, a split between what's been governmental power aligning itself with the church. Because if the Bible tells us this, hear what I'm saying, and this is going to get into some of the Iran war stuff with Armageddon, right? Because, of course not, of course, right? But the Bible says this. Jesus says, I'm coming back for a church without what? Spot, wrinkle, or blemish. We are crazy blemished, and part of the blemish is because of the syncretism that's happening. Because what happens? It causes us to do stuff that you and I would not do if we weren't linked up. Like, think about even your own life. Growing up, there's stuff that you would never have done if your friend had not done it that you were with. Places you would never have gone if your friend that you were with didn't go. Because our friends, they be wilding out. Come here, come on. Can't nobody see it. Ain't nobody watching. Come on. Y'all can get caught. Y'all ain't never had that friend? Y'all probably, have y'all been that friend? So what I'm saying is, that who we link ourselves up with oftentimes will cause us to act in a way out of the character of what we should be in. So the syncretism between the church and America, I'm saying this, is causing the church to do some things and preach some things and act some ways that we ought not be acting, preaching, and talking about. Can you guys see what I'm saying? I want to make sure I don't sound crazy. And this is yet still the gospel. This is still Palm Sunday. So now here's the last piece. Y'all remember? Y'all remember what Jesus did when he came in on Palm Sunday? Like, who traveled recently? Who traveled? Anybody travel recently? Oh, well, not recently. Yeah, I traveled recently, but that's different. Like when you go home, when you travel home, who's traveled home last? Who's traveled home to their hometown last? Probably Christina. You go to New York a lot. So when you go to New York, what is one of the first things you do when you get to New York? Depending on if you're not tired, if you're like in a good mood. That part, Max safe for the win, right? So this is why we wear man purses, y'all call them, right? This is why we wear crossbodies, because he don't get snatched. So y'all, next time I make fun of me with my crossbody, y'all gonna get pickpocketed. So you go eat. You got a spot? What? What do you go get? Okay, so when she gets to home, she has a spot, right? When we get home, depending on what day we get home, like if we go to LA, we land, the airport, LAX is in Westchester. We drive down Manchester and we go to the Serving Spoon. It's a great little hole-in-the-wall breakfast spot. We got spots. And when we leave, we never leave without going to Randy's. Because why not? So what I'm saying to us is when you touch, yeah. So you have a milkshake spot though. You don't go to McDonald's to get a milkshake. You go to where? You go to who? Brahms. I don't know about Brahms, but I take it they got a good milkshake. Okay. So you got a spot. You got things you do when you touch down, right? Rachel's in town, we're going to Brahms. Okay. All right. Christine's in town, we're gonna go get a bodega. Sausage, steak, and cheese, what you said? Okay. So Jesus says, I'm gonna go buy a bodega. So Jesus says, I don't know, maybe that means you and Natalie need to go half on a bodega. I don't know. So Jesus says, when I come to Jerusalem, I got a spot. Got a spot. He says, I'm coming to Jerusalem, ride my donkey in there. They're going to shout my name. I'm going to get crucified in a few days, but I'm going to go to church. When I go home, I love my church. Faithful Central Bible Church, love my church. Miles said it was too long last time we went. I'm like, my bad. I know. I get it. I get it. But, love my church. So Jesus says, I love my church too. So he gets home to Jerusalem, or he gets to Jerusalem rather, goes to church. And he sees that the syncretism, this is Palm Sunday, that syncretism has caused the church to become something other than what it's supposed to be. He goes to the church, about to go worship, about to go hear the pastor preach, or the rabbi teach. So I'm going to go in here, do church stuff. I don't think they had coffee. I'm going to go get some unleavened bread. I don't know. Whatever they did. I'm going to do that. He gets to the church and sees in the lobby area where we got water and a QR code and the thing. He goes out to the lobby and says, hey, y'all got these turtle doves and stuff. It's like, cool. Okay. Y'all got merch. Sort of, kind of. So here's what I want to see. The turtle doves in themselves weren't bad. Because when people came to Passover, they were coming, they would get these to come worship and sacrifice. But what they did with them, they were overcharging, they were giving blemished animals, they were hustling because the commerce and unethical forms of capitalism made their way via state-sanctioned syncretism with the church into the place of worship. So Christ sees that, and he says, what does he say? All this is implied when you know what's happening. He says, my Father's house should be called a house of prayer, but you have made it into a what? Den of thieves. That the church should be a place of worship, adoration, submission, community, all these things that are supposed to happen at the church, but you've made it something where commerce has taken hold, and it's only because of the greed that is coming as a part of the syncretism with the state. And the response to that by Jesus is, I'm going to turn over tables. I'm going to kick over your ATM machines. I'm going to wrinkle up a little T-shirt and throw it in the trash. All these things Christ said I'm going to do because I'm overturning the unholy marriage that you have as a church with the state. So what am I saying? Let this Palm Sunday, and it's such an appropriate time because we are in a crazy place. Let this Palm Sunday be where we get to see the both and of Jesus. The both and is this. And we're winding down, Theo. I know, buddy. We're winding down. So the both and is this. Give me about 2 minutes, Theo. The both and is this. That Christ cares and inaugurates himself on Palm Sunday, coming to say, I'm coming to save your souls. Yes, my primary thing is I'm coming to save your souls. You can have conversations on Armageddon and rapture later. We're not talking about that. But I'm coming to save your souls. Paul said, if my kinsmen could come to Christ, I would be accursed. I would give up everything for them to come to Christ. He's talking about the Jewish nation at this time. Paul is. So Christ said, I'm coming to save your souls. But there are implications with soul saving that make their way into my everyday life. There's an implication with soul saving that it makes its way into my political discourse. So he said, I'm coming to save your souls. I'm not an either or king. I'm a both and king. Save your soul. Yes, Romans 10:9 and 10, all that good stuff. John 3:16, all the good stuff. Yes. Please, Lord, do those things. But it's coming to say, the mere fact that I do that now makes you and me, makes us, we's, dangerous to the status quo that's linked itself up with church and nation. Do you guys get what I'm saying? He says, a life that you live. So, and we always talk about this. He said, I'm saving the soul first, but you can't disconnect soul saving. There's a different kind of way that you and I are supposed to live in public society because we've been saved. The old school hymn writer would say, I looked at my hands and my hands looked new. I looked at my feet did too. He talks about all these things that began to work themselves that look different on the outside because of what was on the inside. So how do politics look different on the outside because of what has been changed on the inside? How do voting patterns change on the outside based on what has been done on the inside? Or are we voting or living in polite society based on the syncretism of nation and church? And Christ said, I came to bust up that party. That my presence is busting up all the preconceived notions you had about the kingdom's supposed to be, kind of church you're supposed to worship in, how you're supposed to live the life out. And how do I know that that's the thing? And we're done here. You can play the music later, shut me up. We're done here. How do I know it's the thing? Because at the end of it all, not only did the disciples, not only did I told you disappearing, Jason, I told you, not only did the Jewish leadership say, we don't like what you're doing here. You are disrupting. Like, have you ever, do you have any friends that know you're Christians? I'm not indicting you, I'm just asking. She's like, yeah, they know I'm Christian. I don't have a cross around my neck at a press briefing, but I digress. They know you're Christians. And have you ever been in your life, maybe not now, I don't know, but in your life, you're around a friend that knows you're a Christian, and if they cuss or start to cuss, say, oh, I'm sorry. Have you ever seen that before? Had it before? So you have that because they're like, I know you are a Christian, and so there's certain, oh, we can't do this because Christina here. We're just about to cut up, but Christina here, not Tiny, because she'll be like, yeah, no, but Christina's here. We can't do that, right? Because there's certain presence. There's a certain presence that doesn't allow you to act a fool. Think about your parents, right? You might be all big and grown, but when your parents come around, there's still like, that's mom, that's dad. There's still something in you. Like I'm my big old age of 52. That's how old I am, right? That maybe I'm older because my mind, I don't remember. But I had birthday March 9th. I think I turned 52. But at my age of 52, not 51, not 51, 52. It's not that much of an age gap between me and my wife. She's like, you're 45. That would be that's awkward, right? That's awkward. So, in my big old age, when my mom comes over, when she visits from LA, hey mom, or just the way I talk to her, the way I engage with her, I engage with her as a grown-up, but a grown-up that's her son. And I am not just talking in any kind of way, acting a plumb fool because I might be grown, but she's still my mom. Why is that important? Because I'm just giving you some examples, because as Christians, because of who, I remember back in the day, I used to drive, and this in LA, and I wasn't always listening to the most wholesome music, because Tupac, DJ Quick, MC8, these are all West Coast people. You're like, who are any of these people? But I would also have Hezekiah Walker. But at any rate, it was this dichotomy, right? But when I would pass the church, I would turn it down. People do that. Well, they did that. But here I'm going. Right. She had Tupac on, pulled in the parking lot. California love. No. Y'all play too much. So, but I did that. Or even the gangs that would sell drugs. But they would not do it in front of the church. But now, anybody turn the music down in front of the church. They'll sell drugs on the steps of the church. Now, what am I saying? I'm not making an indictment. This is not an indictment on the drug dealer. I think you should be talking about here. This is not an indictment on them or the person playing the music. The indictment is on the decreased level of respect and impact of what the church has always been. And I would venture to say a lot of that is based on the syncretism that the church has gotten in bed with. And so they've watched the church and they've said, oh, they're not living in a way because of the syncretism that deems or demands their respect. Now you may have an individual church that you might drive by and pass, turn the rail down, or another church you may go and turn it up. So what I'm saying is like there was a blanket overarching respect that was had before that does not linger now. So what does syncretism do? What does syncretism do? And I'm done, I promise, I'm done. That's what I say. Syncretism does this. For any of you who love alcoholic beverage, I'm not looking at you because I'm looking at you. I'm looking at you because it's in my direction. I like a White Russian. And Larry shook his head. Larry shook his head behind the production booth. Shook his head like, you and them milkshakes. But what I'm saying is, or if you like an old fashioned or amaretto sour, any drinks that have a ratio in them. Have you ever had a drink? And don't be too holy if you watch this later and be like, drinks, stop playing. Stop playing. Bible says don't be drunk. But drinks, don't play because y'all got one in your hand watching service now. People day drink. But what I'm saying is that there is a dilution that happens with the drink. That it could be watered down. Like I know even, I'll make it simple. My son Daniel, he likes Sprite. Like always soda he drinks. He drinks a little bit. When he goes to get a Sprite, he won't get ice or get very little ice. Because after a while, if you get a lot of ice, once the ice begins to melt, it is stronger in content than the soda. And it dilutes it. So what happens in the church is the more we let syncretism reign with nation and state in the church, the longer it stays, it's been there for a while now, it begins to dilute the influence and the power of what God wants to do in the church. But I declare today on this Palm Sunday, March 29, 2026, that we will live lives from this day forward that are in stark opposition to the merging and the syncretism that we see with nation and church. We're going to live lives that properly honor God and cry out that say, God has changed me on the inside, so it's going to change what I look like on the outside, how I live on the outside. Loving neighbor, loving truth, loving grace, loving mercy, loving justice, loving holiness. All not a both and, but not an either or, but a both and. And it's going to bust up because of my presence and God's presence in me. It's going to bust up all these unholy allegiances that the church has been making with the nation. Amen? All right, so quick question. As you go from this place, question of the day, how will you allow Christ and his presence on this Palm Sunday and every other day to subvert your expectations of the kind of king that you want him to be and the kind of king that he is? Amen? Let's give God some praise.